Welcome to EJH Bridge Cars. So today, for a change, we're not going to work on the floors. The floors are pretty much done. Going to work on the dog leg on the driver's side today. So we'll cut out the old one, get it prepped, and hopefully get the new one installed. If not, we'll install it tomorrow. So let's get started. So here's the old dog leg. So as you can see, I had to cut to get access to that B post, but also the bottom of the dog leg was just completely rotted away. You can still see that on the right hand side there, where there's the last few inches are completely missing, and there's a turnover on the bottom right there. This is the new one, but that was just not there. So as it's such a complex shape, it's not a very large panel, but it's curving this way and it's curving that way. So this would be a very difficult panel for me to fabricate with the tools that I have here. And as rough as this one is, it's been patched and it's rusty. It just seemed better just to go ahead and get a new one. So to start with, clean up this edge so we can find where the spot welds are. Same thing here, clean this edge. There's a seam right about here that's all leaded, so we're going to need to heat that up and get the lead out so we can clean that out. And then we take a grinding wheel and grind it right here, because this is brazed and this is not. This is just floating here, but we'll cut it here or grind it here, much as you would a door panel when you do a skin, and then we can peel that last bit out. So I'm going to go ahead and get that cleaned up, and then we'll get back to you. Well, there's the old one all cut out. You see, we got behind here, there's a tab on this piece that goes under here, and it's pinched in there, so you get that out. There's a spot weld right there. This gets covered by the capping anyhow, and we can put a little piece of tin there when we weld it all back together. And so I've ground down the spot welds, and this edge is a little frilly, so we're going to have to make up some pieces here. And some of these cage nuts look a little worse for wear, so we may replace some of them as well. And then while we got it open, we can spot weld the floor to the sill. I was just looking, I may be able to get my long tongs in there and get the other end of this floor spot welded, so that might be nice. And just for comparison, here's the old dog leg to the new dog leg. When I line those two slots up, that's the rust line, so you can see just how much of this was missing. The new one's a lot nicer. This is that metal tab at the top I was talking about just a minute ago. And of course, this has got a lot of holes and bends now from me cutting it out, but I mean, you can see how rusted this is. There's a ton of Bondo in here, and it's on top of rust, so that's not good. So anyway, so we're going to call it a day for today, because it's getting a bit later in the day, and I'm an old guy, so I don't work more than about 3 or 4 hours at a time. So tomorrow we'll come out. I think we'll get started on fixing this frilly bit, which means we'll have the welder out, which means we can try to spot weld that other side over there. That's what I'm thinking, is I can bring the long arms through there, and that's where it needs to be welded, that last 6 inches of that seam. And I've cleaned all this off. There was one spot weld right there, and the rest was really just held in with the leading material. So that's out of the way now. I still got a little cleanup on a couple of these old spot welds, but it's pretty close. And then of course this had a ton of lead on it, so we'll get the new piece in and we'll try to smooth this out a little bit, get it all back together, and then we'll Bondo it over, because we don't do lead nowadays, or at least I don't. And I'll have to weld up these holes. I think somebody must have put an occasional rear seat in this thing, and they drilled it for a bracket or something, probably pop rivets, looking by the size of the holes. But that was then, this is now. That's no intention of doing that. You can't get anything but a small child back there anyway. That's the difference. You can see how that floor comes down at an angle, because this is a TR2, so up into TS 60,000 and something, they changed the body dies, and they made a lot of changes, so they squared that up. It's also allowed for that cross brace. And there are some differences. I noticed on the rocker panels, The outer panel is different, which must mean that the front edge is different. So the later rocker panel is a 1/4 inch wider there, where it's the same width here, coming out from that flange. So they must have moved the fender out a little bit, maybe just to get a little more wheel coverage. So there are some differences. You know that the way they handle this, the later cars, this bump, this is where that capping goes. This is further back. So it's supposed to be easier to work with the cappings. So there's a ton of small changes. Much as they look very similar, I think there's a little bit of difference up here in the nose too. I think they changed it so in the later cars they don't have to have these holes for the lights. I'm not quite sure what the difference is. And then because judging by how this broke on both sides, in the same spot, even though, see this reinforcing tab right here? There's a crack on here and a reinforcing tab. There's this crack and it broke the reinforcing tab, and that's spot welded. So that was probably in the factory. Because this is, for a TR2, there's a late car. There's, I believe that the serial starts with 6,500 something. And there's 8,500 TR2s, so it's fairly late in production. So I'm not well versed on all the differences, but there's supposed to be a ton of small changes that they just found that with production, things that would make life easier for them in the factory to build the car in the first place. I also noted, if you remember the other side, this dogleg was not spot welded up through here, and this one is. So my guess is that spot weld, and brake buzzer, and that was it. Never got another spot weld in. Anyway, apparently, you know, it lasted 69 years, so who can say they were wrong? Anyway, I used a cardboard template to make this piece. This piece goes here. And I located and drilled and double checked my hole spacing before I cut the old one out. And they're very close to being correct, so good enough. So now I'm going to cut this out from, I already made that top cut. I cut it right at the curve, and then we'll fit the cage nuts to the back of this and weld it in. Alright, so there's the piece cut out. I got it just clamped into place. We'll go through and do a couple of tacks and get the final alignment, and also put in the cage nuts. I managed to save the ones off of the old piece. There you go. One there, one down there. You can see why I want to do this a bit at a time instead of get to weld it where it fits and then, you know, move the clamps and a little bit of hammering. But it comes out all right. It doesn't take too long. So I spent quite a bit of time just sort of fettling this a bit. So for starters, I had to take the primer off the areas where we're going to weld. And I bolted it down to the flange to pull it tight. And that really seems to line up well. I did wind up these slots. I filed out 3/16 or so because they all were very close to the end mostly. So I just thought I'd give myself a little bit of extra room while it was easy to do. And then of course, this bend over down here, this is just a completely the wrong spot for this car. But this is a TR3 dogleg, and of course this is a TR2. So this looks pretty good now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the spot welding, and then we brazed this edge last time. Probably do that again. And then I guess we got to, you can see these two edges aren't together, so they need to be hammered or squeezed or something to get them together, and then sort of rolled over a bit more that way. But I think I'm going to need to stand them up a bit to be able to spot weld them efficiently. But it looks all right. This is going to be okay. You know, the saving grace is that tab underneath, because this was, like I say, this was all leaded. This is a messy joint. So we'll sort of hammer it down smooth again, weld it up so it doesn't crack. If you don't secure this and just Bondo it, as much as this is a tight fit, this body flexing will make this Bondo crack all the time. So you got to at least spot weld this and grind it flat. So we'll get on with that. Well, there it is. Its spot welds are all done. And I welded this seam. The only thing that's not done, I still need to braze this leading edge and that little 6-inch piece on the bottom. I'll need to MIG weld that. But it's getting late in the day and I'm tired, so I'll do that tomorrow probably. But looks a lot better, doesn't it? So I'll fix that tomorrow. And then I think we go to the trunk floor. You can see that's under the gas tank. So that needs to be done. But fortunately it's all flat work. Got one simple bend in it. Looks like it'll be pretty easy. So this is the bottom of the dog leg, and I just welded it to the bottom of that flange. And I also brazed this and then just ground it off. Actually looks pretty nice when it's all done. I also put a seam weld on this joint because the couple of the spot welds didn't hold up very well. This one seems to be okay, but I should take a hammer and flatten it out a bit. Well, hope you enjoyed that. That's pretty much the dog legs and the floors and the sills in place. Yay, finally. Been working on it for a week. Don't forget to like, share, join, subscribe, and comment, and we'll see you next time.